The world is crumbling, and there is no end in sight. We, the faithful, must save humanity from the darkness devouring our world. Please guide
my hand to obliterate the scourge and piety from these lands. Let the fires of the underworld take them all.
Bent to the will of another god has been a certainty for many over the last 8 centuries. The righteous fall to malevolent beings, offering them power and immortality, only to become another tool of their destruction. For the Principality of New Antioch, faith is unwavering, but the slightest loss of concentration may send them spiraling down a path of no return.
Alright, welcome back to Trench Crusade, presented by Miniature Game Montage. I am really going to dig the stories we'll be able to tell in this game. This is technically our second battle report, but we are tossing the first report's results out for the campaign. This is due to some of the rules issues we experienced when playing, and we hope to clear those up and have a better outing this time around. I do want to take a moment to say thank you for those that watched, left a like, and provided feedback to help us improve. It means a ton to me personally. No matter what game we play, I always want to be correct and I want it to be special, and sometimes I stub my toe, but I'm committed to improving. With that out of the way, let's take a look at the forces of New Antioch. Lieutenant Frankfurt assumes the leadership position for the reformed 2nd Corps. He carries an automatic rifle, sword, and standard armor. Cleric Marco joins him with pistol, knife, and medikit. Sniper Priest Francis joins with a sniper rifle and standard armor. Mechanized Heavy Infantry Zaire with reinforced armor and machine gun, along with Mechanized Heavy Infantry Tora with two-handed hammer and shield take up arms. Yeoman Diego, Gemini, Carl, and Louis join with bolt-action rifles and bayonets. The 2nd Corps leaves 11 ducats in their stash and depart for battle with 9 active operatives. The reformed 13th Legion operates under Malcorn, a heretic priest with semi-automatic rifle, sacrificial knife, and standard armor. A death commando, Ragnarok, follows him with Tartarus claws and standard armor. A heretic cloister, Ejim, fills their ranks with sacrificial knife. The warband includes a werewolf assault beast named Rector and an artillery witch called Maiden Silas. 3 heretic troopers join them with bolt-action rifles and bayonets, Ramses, Zandar, and Vladik. The warband departs camp with 8 units worth 697 ducats. For the scenario today, we used the random scenario generator and rolled up for Breakthrough. In this game, New Antioch will pick a side for the Heretic Legion to escape from. The Heretic Legion will then pick one as well for their opponent, but it must be different. Any model that moves into contact with the extraction point, which is the exact center of the chosen board edge, that model is removed and counts as escaped. At the end of the game, each side will total up their ducat value of their own models that have escaped the battlefield and divide by 100, rounding up. That's how many victory points they score. For deployment type, we rolled up for flank attack. You can see how that looks from the map. Glorious Deeds will be fickle luck, to use 2 or more blood markers on a single enemy to give one of their actions -2 dice. Reaper was rolled to take out 3 enemies with an action a model has. Risk it all, and they will need to succeed in 2 or more risky actions with one model during a single activation. And lastly, no escape, which is to successfully charge an enemy you can't see. There's also a glory point available for winning the game. These glory points can be used for more powerful characters and weapons later in the campaign. We hope you enjoy this presentation of Trench Crusade. Turn 1 is coming up next. In deployment handled in alternating fashion in this one, the Death Commandos seen here did infiltrate onto the board behind enemy lines. And New Antioch has been selected to go first. We do have one of the yeomans that will make a standard move. He is then going to attempt to shoot. Cover cancels out elevation. He is at long range, and he gets a -1 dice because of stealth on the commando. He still lands a hit with an 8. The commando has standard armor, taking the injury roll to a 7, and he goes down, taking a blood marker. An excellent bolt rifle shot from the yeoman. He'll then attempt to dash, which is a risky action. He fails, and his activation ends. From across the board, the artillery witch begins to summon an infernal bomb. Targeting a spot across the board, it lands a hit. One of the yeomen has line of sight here. As it hits beside him, he'll be knocked back an inch. He does receive cover from the blast, which is minus dice. It ends up being a 3, which is a minor scratch. Typically, you want to roll for knockback. After the injury roll, we also will add an additional blood marker here due to shrapnel, so he has a total of 2. In the next activation, a yeoman activates passing a dash. He is then going to move to the corner of the trench and elect to fire at the commando. Long range and stealth have him at -2 dice, and he still lands a hit on a 7. He rolls up for minor damage, adding another blood marker to the commando. The Death Commando is extremely dangerous, drawing a lot of fire here. He is going to activate next and attempt to hide, first moving to the corner of the trench. He does get +1 dice for this. Not using any of the blood markers to try to stop this, he does successfully hide. In hiding, the Death Commando will not be able to get targeted for shooting or even charges. Up next, New Antioch is going to activate one of their yeomen. This guy does have 2 blood markers on him from shrapnel. He elects to move forward and dash. We will see the same for troopers on the Heretic Legion side, as one moves forward and then passes an action to dash. New Antioch activates their cleric. He is going to attempt to dash, but he fails, and his activation is over. Back to the Heretic Legion, a move and dash is successful. Back to New Antioch, the heavy mechanized infantry is going to move and jump down into the trench. Will then take a risky action to dash, which is successful, obviously moving towards the Death Commando. The chorister moves forward, attempts to dash, and fails, and her activation ends. Back in the New Antioch deployment zone, a yeoman is going to move, hop down into the trench, and then pass a risky action to dash, which is successful. Meanwhile, the Heretic Legion activate another one of their troopers. He does move forward, will attempt to throw 2 dice to dash. That is successful. The leader for New Antioch is going to activate next. He is going to move forward and then attempt to dash. That fails, and his activation is over. The leader for the Heretic Legion activates, passes a dash first, and then is going to elect to move across the bridge, taking up a new position towards the center of the board. Heavy mechanized infantry attempts that same tactic but fails the risky action, and the activation is over. Up next, the Werewolf Assault Beast attempts to dash with +2 dice, and that's successful. He then attempts to do a blind charge, first having to pass a risky action, but he fails. With his action open, the Sniper Priest can see him across the board and elects to fire, first passing a risky action to aim, and that's successful. Elevation is offset by cover, +2 for his skill, +2 for aim. +1 for his rifle, he lands a critical on a 12. A critical hit from the sniper rifle cuts through his armor and the beast goes down. Turn 1 concludes. The Sniper Priest does get Risk It All, a glorious deed for passing 2 risky actions, 1 for the aim, and 1 because the sniper rifle in itself is a risky action. We are going to adjust some blood markers, give the Death Commando 3, as he should be, as well as the yeoman who got hit with the Infernal Bomb 2 due to shrapnel. The turn now going over to the Heretic Legion for turn 2. And in the first activation, the Death Commando elects to charge into the heavy mechanized infantry. 2 blood markers are used to negate his +2 bonus. He rolls Snake Eyes, but he does get to attack again. The 3rd blood marker is used. He is still at + dice here, and he rolls a 10. The injury roll just becomes a minor wound, however, with the armor and shield. Just above them in the trench bunker, the Sniper Priest again looking down at the Werewolf Beast. A shot erupts as he takes a risky action to aim. The aim is successful and he fires. At plus dice, he lands another critical, electing to use the blood marker on the injury roll. Critical bypassing the armor, 6 injury dice results in an out of action, but the werewolf is tough. He treats his first out of action as a down, and he'll receive 2 blood markers. Up next, the Heretic Priest is going to move and then attempt Puppet Master, passing a risky action. He takes control of the wolf and moves him 6 inches to safety. The Heretic Priest will then pass a risky action to dash. Everyone for the Heretic Legion being cautious of the Sniper Priest overwatching the battlefield. We move back to New Antioch as a yeoman moves forward. He then aims his bolt-action rifle and fires at minus dice due to cover. He then attempts to dash but fails. Meanwhile, Heretic troopers move and pass a dash to get to move again. Back to New Antioch, a yeoman passes a dash. He moves to the top of the trench and then opens fire, elevation being offset by cover. He lands a hit and then rolls for injury, and it is going to be a down result. The Heretic trooper takes a blood marker and crashes to the ground. And with his goal accomplished, the yeoman is going to use his normal move to back off the trench, but he is going to keep his head poking out so he can see what's going on. As we swing back to the Heretic Legion, we do see a standard move. He will then attempt to dash, taking a risky action that is successful. The lieutenant for New Antioch is going to attempt to dash first, just in case he fails. It is successful as he climbs to the top of the trench. He is then going to use a normal move. He can move just far enough to see the artillery witch and opens fire with his automatic rifle. The lieutenant can hear the hymns of the chorister, which gives him minus dice. He still lands a hit and takes the artillery witch out of action. And a single shot from the lieutenant finds its mark on the artillery witch and takes her down. The Heretic Legion activates their chorister, trying to do a dash action, but it fails. The Trench Cleric then activates, attempts to give a blessing to the mechanized infantry. That is successful. The Trench Cleric moves forward, attempts a risky action to dash, but fails. Meanwhile, the Heretic Trooper is able to stand, move at half speed so he doesn't have to fire through any cover. The blood marker is used to give him minus dice. He fires and still lands a hit on the yeoman. The injury die is going to take him out of action. A shot up close takes one of the infantry down. As we move back to New Antioch, the heavy mechanized infantry, locked in combat with the Death Commando, swings with a double-handed hammer but misses. Up next, the Werewolf Assault Beast stands, uses a dash with +2 dice. He's only able to move 4 inches, but he does get to the top and then attempts to charge into the lieutenant, and he goes over the sandbags and into contact. The lieutenant isn't close enough to defend the obstacle as the chainsaw mouth comes down. He uses both blood markers, but he is still at plus dice and lands a hit. There's also a plus dice to the injury roll, and the lieutenant goes down, taking a blood marker. The beast then lashes out with his shredding claws, but misses. Remaining moves belong to New Antioch, as a yeoman is going to move, and then pass his dash to move again. Another yeoman is going to do the same, moving but hopping down to avoid the barbed wire, passing a dash, getting on the steps, and moving back to the top of the trench. Up next, mechanized heavy infantry is going to lumber forward to get an angle on the Heretic trooper. The minigun fires, getting 2d6. The first shot misses. The second shot hits, and on the injury roll, it is going to be minor damage. The trooper will receive a blood marker from that shot, the machine gun able to fire 3 times. On his third shot, he decides to use the blessing, gets a hit, and the injury roll is going to be a 5, another minor hit. The mechanized infantry does attempt to dash to get out of line of sight. It does fail. His activation ends, but 2 blood markers now on the Heretic trooper. As turn 2 comes to a close, getting across the board proving to be difficult for both sides. We did see the artillery witch get taken down by the lieutenant and his automatic rifle. However, the lieutenant is tied up with a werewolf. New Antioch will pick up a glory point for fickle luck as we move to turn 3. And still control of the initial action, the Heretic Legion is going to activate the Werewolf Assault Beast as he is in melee with the Lieutenant. His Chain Maw hits, and then he attempts to wound. Using the Blood Marker here, he does get an out of action, but the Lieutenant is tough. The Lieutenant takes 2 Blood Markers and goes down. The Werewolf continues his assault, this time with his Shredding Claws. He lands another hit, and the Lieutenant can use his armor here. It is a down result. New Antioch takes their first activation with the Mech Infantry, swinging at the Death Commando. He does miss though, as the Blood Marker is used. The Commando activates, attempts to fight back, but he misses on his first attempt. His second attempt does land a hit, and the injury roll is a 10 minus 3, makes it a 7. As this Mech Infantry goes down, the other Mech Infantry opens up with a machine gun cover, offsetting his skill. He still lands a hit. With 2 Blood Markers on the Heretic Trooper, he uses both of them to influence the injury roll, and he does roll up for an out of action at plus dice. The Mech Infantry then begins moving forward through the trench line. Up next, we have a Heretic Trooper who sweeps around the corner, aims his bolt-action rifle at the Yeoman, and opens fire, landing a hit. He uses 2 Blood Markers to influence the injury roll, but it's not good, it's just minor damage. The Trooper is then going to roll up to dash, which is successful as he closes the gap. The Yeoman counters by moving to an elevated position, decides to fire down, but the Blood Marker is used and cancels out his elevation, so just 2d6. He misses. He then takes a dash attempt, passes, and gets back into cover. Meanwhile, another Heretic Trooper dashes out from behind cover. He then uses his standard move and will fire his rifle at the Trench Cleric. Cover and range give him minus dice. He rolls a 3 and misses. The Trench Cleric activates next, getting out of the open and moving into cover. He is then going to take a risky action to give himself a blessing. He does take a shot at the closest trooper, cover and long range, and he still gets a hit on minus dice. The injury roll is a 7, and he sends one of the troopers down. Up next, the Heretic Priest activates, attempts to use Puppet Master, but he ends up failing and his activation will end. We move to the center of the board where the Lieutenant attacks the Werewolf, both Blood Markers being used. The Chorister also providing minus dice here, and he fails to hit the Werewolf. The Chorister then activates, attempts a dash, and passes, then will attempt a risky action to blind charge, but that fails, the activation is over. On the other end of the board, a Yeoman attempts a blind charge, but fails the risky action. Just below him, another Yeoman does the same, attempting a blind charge, successfully passes the risky action, rolls a 2 to get into combat with the Death Commando, but fails to stick him with his bayonet. Up next, the Sniper Priest, who's been observing the battlefield, moves down from the bunker, but fails a risky action to dash, and his activation ends. And that brings us to the end of turn 3. New Antioch is going to score another glory point for passing a blind charge. Moving into turn 4, the Heretic Legion will have the priority still, and they may have an opportunity to get one of their fighters off the board and claim victory points. With turn 4 getting underway and the Heretic Legion with the option, they do take the priority. A Heretic Trooper moves forward. He then passes a dash and gets to the extraction point. Heavy Mechanized Infantry with his machine gun moves forward and lines up a shot at the Chorister, who is minus 1 dice due to her hems. The minigun hits, but the result is minor damage. Applying a Blood Marker, he fires again and hits, and this time it is a 7. The Chorister goes down, receiving more Blood Markers. An additional shot hits, the Blood Markers are expended, and the Chorister goes out of action. The Mechanized Infantry is then going to roll 2 dice to attempt a dash. That is successful, and he moves forward, getting into cover. Across the board, the Death Commando lands a shot against the Heavy Mech Infantry, and then rolls to damage. Expending that Blood Marker, going to plus dice, and that is an 11. Minus 3, however, it is going to be a downed result. The Death Commando hits again, using those Blood Markers once more, trying to get a 12 here, but cannot do it. Meanwhile, for New Antioch, the Trench Cleric moves forward. He does use his blessing to give plus dice here, and he lands a hit. The blood marker is used on the injury roll, and it is an out of action. He takes the trooper down. The Trench Cleric then passes a dash action to continue moving forward. At the center of the board, the Werewolf Assault Beast attacks again with his Chainmaw, easily hits. He bypasses armor, and a 10 is rolled. That is an out of action. The Lieutenant is taken off the board. The Wolf then dashes back, headed toward the mechanized infantry. Hearing this, the Sniper Priest goes back into the bunker using his elevated position. First, a risky action to aim, which is good. Targeting the Werewolf, he easily lands a hit. He rolls an 8 for injury, -3 with the armor. It's just a minor hit. The Sniper Priest is very deadly when he rolls criticals. Not getting one this time, the Werewolf only suffers a blood marker. Just behind the Werewolf, the Heretic Priest is going to fire his semi-automatic rifle at the mech infantry. Lands a critical, which adds to the injury roll, and he gets a 7. The 7 becomes a 5 with his reinforced armor, and there's a charge into combat. The Heretic Priest's weapon has the assault keyword, so he can shoot and then lunge into combat. That's exactly what he does with his sacrificial knife. He is easily going to hit. He then rolls a 10 using the blood marker on the injury roll, gets +2 for the sacrificial knife, which is a 12, and he takes the mechanized infantry out of action. Malcorn's laugh can be heard across the board as he attempts to dash, but he fails and his activation is over. On the other side of the board, the mech infantry stands and swings at the commando. He hits, but only causes minor damage. The yeoman standing just to the back of him attempts to strike him with his bayonet, but cannot hit. Another yeoman from up top attempts a blind charge, but he fails and his activation is over. One more yeoman attempts to dash, which is successful as he climbs to the top of the trench line. He then fires his bolt-action rifle at minus dice, still landing a hit, causes minor damage to the Heretic Priest. The yeoman then moves to the foothold where he can continue to monitor what's happening outside the trench. And with turn 4 concluded, the Heretic Legion has now lost at least half of their warband due to out of actions. They will have to take a morale test to see if they can stay in the game. We go to their leader Malcorn, attempting to pass on the action success chart, but he rolls a 3, and the Heretic Legion will retreat from the battlefield. And if the Heretic Legion could have passed that morale test, they could have stuck around for another turn and potentially won this game, as they were the only faction to successfully get a fighter off the board. It was not meant to be, however, as New Antioch is going to take the victory today, scoring glory points on the way. We've got the post-game report coming up. Okay, that one was a lot of fun. I was really blown away by the initial views and the feedback that we got on our first video. Again, thank you guys so much, and a big shout out to the Discord for the rules section specifically, where you folks have been helping me out along the way. I really appreciate it. Whenever I ask a question, I get an answer pretty quickly, and that's very important. For post-game updates, Ejim, the chorister, did suffer a dark memory and will suffer from fear from New Antioch moving forward. The rest of their fighters were able to recover. Over for New Antioch, Lieutenant Frankfurt rolled up for a recovery. Zaire was found robbed, the heavy mechanized infantry, and Louis, the yeoman, was found dead. Due to the glory point received by Priest Francis, he did receive an advancement and rolled up for a patron skill, and he selected Favored by God, which will give his faction a glory point at the end of each game. In exploration, New Antioch did find a map and document bag, which will grant them an exploration reroll. They also got 140 ducats. The Heretic Legion found a trade merchant and decided to attain 2 glory points through him, and they will walk away with 110 ducats. Once again, thank you so much for all your support. Really appreciate it. Supporters Club, your names are on the screen now. Certainly appreciate your support. It is by no means necessary. I ask for nothing. If you've watched the video this far, you've done more than enough to support the channel, so thank you so much. We will see you in the next one. Take care.